She was walking home in the freezing dark after a double shift at the bakery, her hands numb, her legs shaking with exhaustion, when a sound stopped her cold behind the dumpsters. What she found there that night would change 2 lives forever. And just 3 weeks later, a knock on her door would threaten to tear it all away. Stay until the end, because what happens to this young mother and the baby she saved will break your heart, and then put it back together. Before we start, if stories like this move you, please hit that subscribe button right now. Costs you nothing, but for a small channel like this one, it's the only thing that keeps these stories alive and reaching people who need to hear them. And if tonight's story touches you the way I think it will, a small super chat donation means more than you know. It helps us keep telling stories like Emma's. Okay, let's begin. Emma Carter clutched a bag of day-old rolls in her frozen hands, her only pay for another exhausting night shift at the bakery. They still smelled faintly of cinnamon, though the cold had already stolen their warmth. She walked down the dark alley behind her apartment complex on the outskirts of Detroit, where half the streetlights had burned out years ago and nobody had bothered to fix them. One flickered, another was dead, a third threw a weak yellow stain across the frost-covered pavement. Ice crunched under her boots, and every step sent a shiver through her exhausted body. Her backpack dragged at her shoulder. Her fingers, jammed deep in her coat pockets, felt like they belonged to someone else. She was running on fumes. Her shift had been brutal, and she had maybe 2 hours of sleep ahead of her before the next one started. Her thoughts were simple. Eat something, pull a blanket over her head, and pray the neighbors stayed quiet for once. Then, near the dumpsters by the garages, she saw it, a shape. Dark, still, almost like a shadow that refused to move. She froze, listened. At first, nothing but wind whistling between the garage doors. Then a thin, barely there sound. Something choked back and small, like a kitten, or a baby. Emma's feet moved before her brain caught up. She pulled out her phone, switched on the flashlight and pointed it down. Her heart stopped. Tucked into a pile of rags between a broken cake box and someone's old shoe was a tiny infant. His face was tinged blue. His lips trembled. His tiny hands were pressed against his chest. He was alive. Panic crashed over her, but her body moved on its own. Her hands shook as she tore off her coat and wrapped the baby against her chest. The same way she used to hold her one and only stuffed rabbit back in the group home, hiding under the covers from the dark. The baby was warm, unbearably light, almost weightless, like he was made of nothing at all. He didn't cry. He only breathed, soft and shallow, as if his entire world right now was her heartbeat, her hands, her warmth. Something in Emma's chest twisted. Pain, fear, and tenderness, all at once. Her knees buckled, but she didn't let go. Couldn't let go. His breathing was weak but steady, and it lit something inside her she thought had gone out a long time ago. Hope. She ran home, to her tiny room in the extended stay apartments, where the air smelled like damp plaster, a burned-out coffee maker, and someone's dinner 2 doors down. Her soaked coat clung to her legs. Cold puddles soaked straight through her sneakers to the skin. But her mind held only one thought. He's breathing. She didn't call 911. She couldn't. She was too afraid he'd end up exactly where she had. In a system that sorted kids by bed number, where crying at night wasn't allowed, and the word mom was too painful to even say out loud. A day passed. Then another. Emma named him Elijah. She turned the name over and over in her mind before landing on it. An old story about a boy who was found and never given up on, and something about it felt personal. Her Elijah was just as stubbornly, fiercely alive. She warmed him with hand warmers pressed into socks tucked under a blanket. She fed him formula drop by drop through a needleless syringe. She hand-washed cloth diapers in the sink and dried them on the radiator. She rigged a lamp on the windowsill so warmth would fall directly on the makeshift crib she'd built from a cardboard box and an old quilt. Sometimes she sang to him. She couldn't remember the words anymore, but the melody lived somewhere deep inside her, and the baby would go quiet the moment he heard it. Some nights she just sat there, afraid to move, afraid to wake him, her mind spinning. How do I keep doing this? How long can I actually manage this? Time blurred. Day bled into night. No one came looking. No one asked questions. In that small, quiet world, there was only her and Elijah. 3 weeks later, someone knocked on her door. At first, the knock was cautious, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they should even be there. Then it grew louder, more insistent, edging toward irritation. Emma froze. Elijah had just fallen asleep, and every knock made her heart pound harder. She crept to the door and looked through the peephole. On the landing stood a woman in a formal coat. Behind her, a man in uniform. Her stomach dropped straight through the floor. Her palms went cold and damp. Did a neighbor report me? Did someone catch something on a camera? Are they here for the baby? She didn't have time to think it through. The knock came again, harder this time, and everything that had begun as a quiet act of kindness, one rescued breath in the freezing dark, was about to turn into a storm. A storm made of paperwork, suspicion, and questions she had no good answers for. Her tiny room suddenly felt like a box with no place left to hide. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, unable to tear her eyes from the door. Her fingers twisted into the hem of her old sweater. Everything inside her clenched into a tight, terrified knot. Outside, unfamiliar footsteps, muffled voices. It all sounded like the echo of a disaster about to break down her door. Her heart wasn't beating in her chest anymore. It was pounding in her throat, her ears, her temples. She was shaking all over, because whoever was behind that door might be here to take her son away. And by now, Emma no longer had any doubt. Elijah was her son. Not by paperwork, not by blood, by every glance, every breath they'd shared in the corner of the room. On the bed, the baby slept quietly, wrapped in an old quilt, nestled on a folded coat. His face was calm, and there was something almost unsettling about that calm. Like he somehow knew his mother was near and nothing could touch him. Like he trusted her more than she trusted herself. The window had fogged over. Outside, the ordinary sounds of a Detroit morning drifted up. Cars, kids yelling, a dog barking. Life going on as usual, while inside this small room, a different world braced for war. Emma pressed her hand to her face, then gently stroked the baby's stomach through the blanket, as if drawing strength from his warmth. She had no idea how much time had passed. Minutes, hours, but something inside her was already ready to fight. If they come for him, she thought, I won't give up without a fight. The door opened slowly. A woman in her 40s stepped in, wearing a sharp coat and carrying a briefcase. Behind her, the officer, his eyes tired and wary. Grace Reynolds, the woman said. We're with Child Protective Services. We received a report. He's my son, Emma said quietly, not even considering denying it. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. According to our records, that's not possible. The woman leaned toward the crib. Emma stepped between them. He was outside, in the trash. If I hadn't found him, he would have died. Her voice cracked into something closer to a scream. I couldn't just walk past. I couldn't. We're not accusing you, the woman said gently. But this can't continue like this. We're required to find out everything, who you are and how you ended up with him. Elijah woke and started to fuss. Emma scooped him up instantly, pressing him to her chest. The baby buried his face into her shoulder and went still. He only calms down with me. Only with me, she whispered. The officer pressed his lips together but said nothing. Only his eyes hardened. The caseworker glanced at him, sighed, and scribbled something in her notebook, glancing back and forth between Emma and the baby, as if trying to catch something unspoken. We'll be back, she said. Someone from the agency will come tomorrow. Until then, please don't leave the apartment. The moment the door shut behind them, Emma's legs gave out and she sank straight to the floor. Her hands trembled as she held Elijah tighter, terrified that if she loosened her grip for even a second, he'd disappear. She barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the caseworker's cold expression, the officer's wary stare. Her heart would race all over again, a lump rising in her throat. She paced the room, tucking blankets around Elijah, stroking his cheek, as if convincing herself. He's here, he's breathing, he's with me. but the fear never let go. At dawn, Emma shuffled into the hallway in her old slippers, coat thrown over her pajamas, and knocked on her neighbor's door. Sarah, a nurse at the local clinic. Sarah was already brewing coffee, and the moment she saw Emma's face, she wordlessly slid a second mug across the counter. The two of them had an unspoken agreement. If Emma showed up this early, something was wrong. "If they take him, I won't survive it," Emma whispered, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "I need documents. Something, anything, to prove I saved him, that I didn't do anything illegal." Sarah frowned, then nodded. "I know someone at the hospital records office. We used to work shifts together back in the day. Let me ask around. Maybe there was a case like this. If a baby was never registered, there might be a small chance." "A small chance is still a chance," Emma breathed. "Thank you, Sarah. Really, you're like a guardian angel. I would have lost my mind without you." Sarah smirked over her coffee. "More like a sanitation angel. But for you, I'll try. Just Emma, hang in there. Don't fall apart on me. Understand?" Emma nodded, feeling something stir in her chest. Hope, maybe, or gratitude. It didn't feel quite as terrifying anymore. They spent the whole day calling every hospital in the region. Some hung up on her. Some were rude. But by evening, a voice on the line said, "We actually did have an incident here. A newborn had gone missing weeks earlier. The mother had given him up, then fled with him before discharge. He was never properly registered. It had happened almost a month ago." Emma gripped the phone with both hands, shaking. "It's him. It's definitely him." "I can come in," she said. "Bring the baby. Explain everything. I never meant to hide anything. I was just scared." The voice on the line paused. "Come in, and bring a witness." Sarah went with her. In the waiting room, they sat holding hands. Then came the interview, the examination of the baby, question after question. Finally, a woman from the review board said quietly, "We can see how attached he is to you. We can see you're not a stranger to him. Sometimes, in cases like this, fate makes its own decision." They walked out of the office, Elijah pressed close. Sarah cried. Outside, the sun was shining, and melting snow dripped from the trees straight onto their hands. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Emma felt warm inside, and knew, deep down, she wasn't alone anymore. "I'm his mom," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." Footsteps grew louder in the hallway. Emma, standing at the window with Elijah in her arms, felt her breath catch. She already knew who was coming. She could feel it in the air, thick like the moment before a storm. The door swung open without a knock. Emma jumped to her feet, clutching Elijah tighter. 3 people stood in the doorway, the same caseworker, this time with a man in a sharp suit carrying a briefcase and a cold expression, and a third, younger man with a camera. "We need to document the visit," the woman said. "Why are you filming him? Pointing that thing directly at my baby?" Emma backed toward the bed, instinctively shielding the child with her body. "This is protocol. Don't worry, everything's by the book." "By the book?" Emma repeated, her voice breaking. "And who's protecting us? Who's protecting him?" The man in the suit pulled out a folder and read flatly. "We verified your background. You grew up in the foster system. You're currently unemployed, living in extended stay housing. Financial resources are minimal. Living conditions for raising a child are, frankly, questionable." "It's still a home," Emma shot back through clenched teeth. "This is the only home the 2 of us have ever had." Elijah began to whimper. Emma pulled him closer, feeling something boil over inside her. "He trusts me. He only smiles for me," she cried. "I'm his mother." The caseworker lowered her eyes but gestured for the cameraman to continue anyway at that exact moment. Sarah burst through the door, coat half-buttoned, hair a mess. "Wait!" she shouted. "I'm a witness. She's not lying. I'm a nurse. I saw her find that baby. I helped her through all of it. She has more maternal instinct than half the mothers I've ever met." The man in the suit grimaced. "Let's keep emotion out of this." "How can you?" Sarah shot back, nodding at Emma. She hasn't slept in weeks. She's fed him from her own hands every single day. Look at him. Does he look scared? Does he look neglected? Silence. Only the sound of melting snow dripping from the window. Emma whispered, "If you take him from me, I won't survive it." Then the officer, silent until now, stepped forward. "I've got 3 kids of my own," he said. "I know what it looks like when a kid trusts his mother. This boy looks at her exactly like that." The camera clicked off. The man with the briefcase murmured something to the caseworker. "For now, you'll stay together during the review," she said. "But the investigation isn't over. New facts have come to light. There's a hearing tomorrow." When they left, Emma and Sarah stood in silence. Elijah smiled, as if he understood everything. "The fight isn't over," Sarah whispered. "You hear me?" Emma nodded, lips trembling, eyes full of resolve. "I'm not giving him up to anyone. He's mine." The next day, walking out of the county social services office after a 2-hour hearing, Emma's ears rang. Her heart pounded somewhere near her throat. The air felt heavy, the street too bright. Rushing for the bus, she collided with a man near the stairwell. Her bag jerked. Her notebook slipped and fell down the steps. "Careful," he said, picking it up and handing it back. Tall, glasses, a calm and intelligent face. "Thank you," she breathed. "I remember you," he said gently. "You carried yourself well at the hearing today. I'm Alex. I'm an attorney. I work custody cases. Is there any real hope for me?" she asked, voice shaking. "There's hope, and there's a path forward," he said. "If you ever need help, I might be able to speed up the custody process." He handed her a business card and walked away. Emma stood on the stairs, clutching her notebook, feeling, for the first time in a long time, like someone actually believed in her. And she found herself wanting to believe, too. A week passed. Emma pulled on the same worn coat every morning, grabbed her folder of documents, and made the rounds. Waiting rooms, the same questions over and over, the same photographs and paperwork. Some days she felt like she had nothing left. Then she'd think of Elijah, his tiny fingers, the way he laughed in his sleep, and she'd keep going. Alex didn't just give advice. He called agencies personally, arranged appointments, sometimes walked into offices right alongside her. His presence gave her strength. One afternoon, walking back from a meeting, he stopped outside a pharmacy. "Give me a minute." He came back with a bag, vitamins, baby powder, hand cream, tea. "You're too thin, and your hands are always cold," he said, smiling faintly. With every passing day, Emma understood more clearly. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was someone whose presence made her feel calm, warm, safe. "You've changed," Sarah said one evening, pouring tea. "Something in you just grew stronger." Emma smiled. She could feel it too. The day of the final decision, she walked into the hearing with shaking hands and her head held high. In the hallway, a secretary called her name and handed her an envelope. Emma's eyes caught the first line, and her heart clenched with anticipation. Confirmed. For a moment, everything around her seemed to freeze. The smell of coffee from the vending machine, footsteps in the hall, even her own breathing. She pressed the letter to her chest, unable to hold back tears. "It's real. It's really real." She sank onto a nearby bench, holding Elijah close, and through her tears whispered, "We're home. We're really home now." Custody was confirmed. Elijah would stay with her. That evening, Alex let himself in without knocking, carrying paperwork. "This isn't the finish line yet," he said, "but it's close." Then he gently touched her shoulder. "You're strong, and I'm here. If you'll let me, I'd like to stay, not just as your lawyer." Months later, after a full investigation, after authorities searched for Elijah's biological family, after they learned his birth mother had died in a car accident just after giving birth, and that a terrified young relative had left him by the dumpsters out of fear, the court ruled in Emma's favor. Alex stood beside her through every hearing, not as her attorney, but as family. A year and a half later, Emma and Alex moved into a small house outside the city, one that had belonged to his grandmother. Quiet woods, a creek nearby. Mornings, They'd brew coffee and sit on the porch, watching Elijah toddle barefoot through the grass, chasing butterflies, while something warm and real grew quietly between them. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the air smelled like mint and fresh-cut grass, Emma rested her head on Alex's shoulder. He didn't move, just wrapped an arm gently around her. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was agreement. She thought back to her childhood, no parents, growing up in the foster system, learning young how to be strong for herself. She used to watch other kids talk about field trips and family vacations and just look away, like that world wasn't meant for her. Back then, she made herself a promise. If she ever had a home and a child of her own, she'd make sure he never felt alone. She didn't know yet how long the road to that promise would be. But now, sitting on the porch beside Alex, watching Elijah laugh in the grass, she understood. The road had been hard, but it had led her exactly where she was always meant to be. If this story moved you the way it moved me, please subscribe. It costs nothing, but it's the only thing keeping stories like Emma's alive on this channel. And if you're able, a super chat donation, big or small, genuinely helps us keep telling stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.